ورتل القرآن ترتيلا.
Assalamu alaikum. In this lesson, we will be covering the rule of Sakt. Our learning objectives are to know the meaning of Sakt, to know the places Sakt is obligatory, and to know where Sakt is optional. So what is Sakt? Sakt means to hold the sound at the end of a word or a letter without taking a breath, with the intention of carrying on with the recitation immediately. So a breathless pause. This is the symbol of Sakt. It's just a small scene on top of a word. According to Hafs, there are 4 places in the Quran where Sakt is wajib, obligatory. This is in Surah Al-Kahf, Ayah 1, Surah Al-YASIN, Ayah 52, Surah Al-MUTAFFIFIN, Ayah 14, and Surah Al-QIYAMAH, Ayah 27. Let's look at each one in detail. Surah Al-Kahf, Ayah number 1. As you can see, in the word AYAH, the tanween is substituted by an alif, and you can see a small sin sign. If stopping, you do waqf, which means you stop with a breath, but if you are continuing, you must apply sakt, which means a breathless pause. So you would read it as وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ عِوَجًا قَيِّمًا. So you have had a breathless pause. That's if you're continuing, and if you're carrying on and you want to make a compulsory stop, you would say وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ عِوَجًا قَيِّمًا لِيُنذِرْ. So you would have a stop and you'd be able to take a proper breath. So that is Surah Al-Kahf, Ayah number 1. The second example is of Surah Yasin, Ayah 52. So again, you can see the word marqadina. It has a small sin sign on top, which is sakt, and also it has a qili sign, which means that it is better for you to stop here. So if we chose to stop at the word marqadina, then we can take a breath and say mim marqadina hadha. However, if we stopped but we wanted to just apply the sakt, so make a breathless pause, we would read it as mim marqadina hadha, and we would take that little time for a breathless pause and carry on. The third example is in Surah Al-Qiyamah, Ayah 27. Now here, as you can see, it is in the middle of the ayah. The sakt will actually stop the rule of idgham. As you can see, there is a noon sakina followed by the letter ra, where normally we would make a merging, an idgham. But because of the sin sign, the sakta sign, we won't. We will be reading the noon clearly. So we will read it as وَقِيلَ مَنْ رَاقَ. And here you take the breathless pause and read the noon clearly. The next example is in Surah Al-Mutaffifin, Ayah 14. As you can see, on top of the word bal, there is the sakta sign again. Same, it will prevent the rule of idgham here. The lam has to be recited clearly and the sakta has to be applied. So you would read it as كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ, and you would make the breathless pause. So these are the 4 obligatory saktas. Now let's look at the 2 places where there is an optional sakt. This is in Surah Al-HAQQAH, Ayah 28-29, and in between the 2 surahs, Surah Al-ANFAAL and Surah Al-TAWBAH. So the first one, Surah Al-HAQQAH, if we look at the word maliyah at the end of Ayah 28 and look at the word at the beginning of Ayah 29, halaka. So we can read this in 3 ways. The first one, we can just read it as a waqf, a stop, and take a breath. So, ما أغنى عني مالية هلك عني سلطانية. Take a breath. The second way is where we can do the idgham mutamathil. So we've done already the topic of idghams. So here we'd make a merging. How would we read that? So it'd be ما أغنى عني مالية هلك عني سلطانية. So basically it would be like a shadda on the ha, the second ha. You'd just be merging it together. The third way is the sakt, the topic that we're actually covering at the moment, where we would take a breathless pause. So here, ما أغنى عني مالية هلك عني سلطانية. So you've just taken a small breathless pause in between the two ayahs. The second example is between the two surahs, Surah Al-Anfal and Surah Al-Tawbah. So if we just have a look at the last portion of Surah Al-Anfal and the beginning of Surah Al-Tawbah. So you can see there is the word alimun and then bara'atun. So how can we read it? Again, three ways. The first is waqf. So you just make a stop at the end of the ayah. So you would just say, Inna Allaha bi kulli shay'in alim. Bara'atun min Allah. Just to remind you that in between these two surahs, if you remember, we do not have a bismillah. We've covered this already. The second way of reciting would be if we looked at the symbol of on the word alimun, it's got the small meme, which means it's a rule of iqlab. So I could just join it up together and say Inna Allaha bi kulli shay'in alimun bara'atun min Allah. Or the third, which is the rule that we're covering, the rule of sakt at the moment, that's our topic. So I would take a breathless pause and I would say, Inna Allaha bi kulli shay'in alim bara'atum. A very small, breathless pause, and I start the next word. So three ways that we can read this particular ayah, and this is an optional sakt. So what have we covered in this lesson? We know the meaning of sakt. We know the places of sakt where it's obligatory, and we know where sakt is optional. Hope you have benefited from this lesson. Keep seeking knowledge. Ma'as salama.